Hello and welcome to this episode of the Blog Chronicles. I am your host, Matthew Loomis. This show is sponsored by BuildYourOwnBlog.net, the full-service destination for people who want to start their own WordPress blog and achieve long-term success. Visit BuildYourOwnBlog.net to start your new blog today. On this episode, we are going to focus on something called personal branding. If you are a little unclear about what personal branding is all about and why you as a blogger should care about it, you will definitely want to turn up your volume and listen in. If you are fascinated by the topic of personal branding, get ready to stay a while because my guest today has a new book out called The Road to Recognition, the A to Z Guide to Personal Branding for Accelerating Your Professional Success in the Age of Digital Media. The subtitle is a mouthful because, frankly, the book is filled with great tips and sound advice on how to get more recognized in your niche by building your personal brand. I've read the book myself, and I can tell you that the book is like an A to Z manual on personal branding, but yet easy to digest. Some are already calling this book, quote, the most comprehensive personal branding resource ever created, unquote. Aside from being the author of this book, my guest has also been a copywriter and creative director in the advertising industry for decades, and he has been a blogger and digital marketer online since 2011. So let's dive in. It's time now to get our chronicle on with my guest, Barry Feldman. Hi, Barry. Welcome to the show.
Hey, kaboomis. Kaboomis Loomis. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, Barry, congratulations on the release of your new book, The Road to Recognition, the A to Z Guide to Personal Branding for Accelerating Your Professional Success in the Age of Digital Media. So how's the book launch coming along so far?
Maybe I could have wrote a longer subtitle, huh?
I'm out of breath.
The book launch is 1 day old and premieres in days 1, 2, and 3 with a Kindle edition only. So as measured by interest and climbing the charts on Amazon and reviews, the book launch has been amazing so far. We are not shipping the printed version due to a printing hiccup until early May, but sales of those are coming in too, and we've developed this whole scheme where buying books in quantity affords you the opportunity to get all this bonus material, and apparently a lot of people are doing that. So I have zero complaints except for the possibly the loss of sleep it took to finish the book and do all the promotions that we've done.
Yeah, it sounds pretty exciting. I'm sort of a part of it. I'm in your Road to Recognition group that's helping get the word out because this book is so good for new bloggers and even experienced bloggers. The way it's laid out, and we're going to get into your book here. Barry, let's go ahead and dive into the topic of the book, personal branding. And first of all, because so many listeners of the Blog Chronicles are new to blogging, I would like to start with the term personal branding. What is personal branding? How do you define it?
Well, Lee Odin has this cool term that I think he might have made up, or I think of him when I think of him at first. He calls it a brandividual. And so that's you. You know, once upon a time, Tom Peters, who everybody knows as the author of In Search of Excellence, while he wrote quite a long roster of great business books. Once upon a time, he said that term in 1997. It was on an article on Fast Company, and he said that you are the CEO of a brand called Me Inc. And so personal branding is basically, the term's so good, I think it almost explains itself. But the act of personal branding is marketing yourself with the intention to be recognized for an area of expertise, hence the title of the book, The Road to Recognition. And I guess as a noun, what is a personal brand? It's the same thing as any other brand, except it applies simply to your persona or your individual efforts as it relates to your profession, and that is the experience people have with you, their expectations, your reputation. I think unfortunately a lot of times a brand is perceived to be simply a logo or a tagline or some combination thereof. But
Mm.
it's everything. It's a blog, it's a website, it's the handshake and the business card exchange, and what you learned and the value that you gave to somebody. So it's an experience. I probably a better definition for branding than any other. I think in the book we go with how Seth Godin defined the brand, and hopefully I've answered that question by now.
Yeah, you did. You did, absolutely. So, Barry, where do you draw the line between personal branding and professional branding?
Um, Professional branding being branding a company.
Yeah, a company, a business.
Yeah, I mean that's a line for sure. The book is targeted at 6 personas we identified in the early goings, and you can find that on the website, theroadtorecognition.com. It says, who is this book for? I think that
Mm.
might even be on the sales page on Amazon. And I look at that and I think, who did we leave out? It's there's not too many people that wouldn't qualify for it. So I think it's for most people. I think it's, first of all, let's say like who it's not for. It's not for the person, and this appears to be a dying breed, although it's not dead, and maybe never will be. For the person who goes to work for a company and is satisfied with a paycheck and some form of anonymity, and they're not interested in being entrepreneurial, and they may never even be interested in finding another job. That person that is going to climb the ranks, work 40 years for a company, and then hang them up and retire.
Mm.
They would probably be just fine without developing a personal brand. However, even they can accelerate the success of their career and help the development of their actual company they work for by thinking like a brander and thinking entrepreneurially. And so I think that line is, in terms of like how you do it today with digital media, that's a fuzzy line. You do it the way big brands do it. The media is so accessible and democratized. Anybody can build a brand with, tactics such as blogging.
Hmm.
But I think if there's a line, it's that inside of a company that maybe you don't own, it's a small business, startup, entrepreneur thing, which is, an ideal target for this book and this idea of personal branding. But inside of a large company, there may, in fact, be a line. Some companies understand the need to foster personal branding from within and give people permission to market themselves, and therefore the understanding is they're helping the company. And then there are those that fear it. Seth Price is the co-author of the book. He's a wonderful example of exactly what I'm talking about. He's the vice president of a company called Playster. Playster is a startup, but it's been around for several years and on a great roll. And they help real estate agents with software services that help them develop websites and deliver content and so forth. And so while he's not the CEO, he's a high-ranking member, an entrepreneur, marketer, kind of an evangelist for the company. And that company wholeheartedly endorses the building of his personal brand. So there almost is no line in that case.
Okay. So, should your personal and online brand uh, be separate at some point, or is it all one and the same, or does that depend on the size?
Well, by online brand, you mean your
Like if you're a
corporation?
blogger, no, let's take it down a little bit. Like a blogger, whether they're monetized or not, if they want to have a big audience, grow a big audience, then should their personal brand, where does is there any distinction between the blog brand and the personal brand?
I think as much as you can attach it to yourself, the better off you're going to be, right? There's this chilling reality in blogging that you're probably not nowhere near the first or only blogger in your category, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be pretty hard pressed to pick a niche no one's in, and if you do, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find an audience quickly.
Right.
So, like there's a little meta here, but we're sort of, you and I talk, blogging as, for blogging or for bloggers. But,
Mm.
that said, I think um, you will indeed put your name forward and develop a voice such that you're overcoming this issue
Mm-hmm.
with speaking to like a very popular category by developing a voice and a personality and a tone and a style, maybe a look, maybe some features that you have that do indeed make you unique. One of the great compliments I get now and then is that I'm told like people have read posts I've written and they knew it was me, even before they discovered that it was me. So
Mm-hmm.
that's quite an accomplishment. So I think, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a balance. Like, um, my website's called Feldman Creative, right? I
Mm.
suppose if I was a true personal brander, I'd have a new website called Barry Feldman, if that was available. Seth has one called sethprice.net. And I've referred to Seth a couple times, and I probably should explain that we did the book together.
Mm.
So, ideally, yeah, your this brand individualism is your name. You're not always going to find that URL is available. And so, like, Feldman Creative is sort of a hybrid, right? Um, it started as a freelance business. Now I'm sort of a boutique agency and consultancy. And when I do what I do for personal branding tactics, while most of my social accounts use the name Feldman Creative, and I'm sending people to my website, I'm putting my name first.
Okay. When it comes to personal branding, there's already been several books published on personal branding. So, what made you want to write another personal branding book at this point?
uh, Demand, I think, at least perceived demand.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story behind the development of the book. I've been fascinated with the topic for probably a decade, and I've read great books on personal branding from those that sort of brought it to the masses, including William Arruda and Dan Shaw Bell, more recently Michael Hyatt, Karen Kang, Dory Clark. It's a pretty hot
Mm.
market. My friend Mark Schaefer just wrote a book called Known that is apparently doing well, and it's targeted to those developing their personal brand. And so I made an infographic. I should say Seth and I made an infographic. I conceived and wrote an infographic in
Mm.
2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it wasn't the first time we had collaborated. It was called The Complete A to Z Guide to Personal Branding. I was just going for reach. I was putting out infographics and finding them to be big hits. A couple kind of viral hits.
Mm.
And the A to Z Guide to Personal Branding was an insane hit. Um, the design credit goes to Seth and his team, and even the promotion does. Really, he must have got that piece on 40 websites. I mean, after a while, it just happens. But he
Hmm.
aggressively marketed as a guest blogging tactic. I did a little bit of
Hmm.
the same, and there was this big buzz. I mean, there was a time when you could search for the title of the infographic, which of course there's no reason anybody would do that, but I did it, out of looking for vanity metrics, I suppose, and it dominated like the first 10 pages of Google. So that's like 100 hits, and so it created interest in the topic. I started speaking on the topic. I started getting interviewed. I started doing all the things that you do when you attach yourself to a niche and are perceived to be an expert. And but then I sort of moved on. Most of my stuff's about content marketing in general. And the buzz wore off, and then the phone rang one day, and it was Seth, and he said, we got to turn this thing into a book. It's just so well received
Hmm.
and popular. Sort of get back to my idea that you're not going to be original in your niche. The conversation was not, um, well, so and so already wrote a good book on personal branding. We should stay away from that. That's ridiculous. I have that conversation now and then with clients saying, there's nothing unique about our niche, or sometimes, even more ridiculous, there's nothing unique about our company.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but say, like, well, what if somebody wanted to write a story about a boy and a girl being in love? No, you go,
Yeah.
oh no, Shakespeare did that.
Right.
Stay away. It's just ridiculous. You want to go where the demand is, and the infographic, to answer your question, I think demonstrated that the demand is huge. And yeah, you can search personal branding any way you want, on Google Trends and on Amazon, and see how the roster of choices is expanding daily. It's a big topic now.
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who's read the book, I think for me, one of the things that really sets it apart from the other personal branding books is its comprehensiveness and how easily digestible it's laid out. It's kind of like a manual
Hmm.
with the A to Z, and I think it's great. And I'm going to start recommending it to new bloggers for sure.
All right, cool, man. I'll write you that check.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the somebody said today in a Facebook Live interview, one of my favorite comments on the book was the way it's organized, and perhaps if the listeners don't yet know, even though the A to Z thing sort of makes it clear, is its narrative is in alphabetical order with 26 chapters, following the requisite prefaces and forwards and so forth
Mm,
that go A, B, C, D, and so on. And so each one of those stands for something that we consider a tactic, a strategy, a milestone in your personal branding pursuits and on your road to recognition, conveniently. And so, yeah, the comment that I'm talking about that I saw in this Facebook Live discussion, these two guys that are on our launch team in Facebook, they made a video of them buying the book, which was cool. And then
mm,
they discussed, one of them had read it and one of them was about to, so they discussed the book real candidly. And the guy that had read it said that he loves that it's organized like that because it's a reference book, or
mm.
it will be for him. And I've also seen comments like some saying, "Do I have to read it in order?" And I'm like, I don't care. Read it in whatever order you want. And so if you're interested in podcasting, the P chapter happens to be about podcasting.
Right.
If you're interested in the speaking, the S chapter happens to be about speaking, and W
Right.
is for website and so forth. So yeah, I have a wall of business books behind me. I think
Mm,
I'm not. This is not uncommon. You probably do, and this doesn't sound very nice, but amazing amount of books on my bookshelf have sticky notes sticking out of somewhere like in chapter 2 or 3 when I got bored.
you
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 know,
do that too? Okay.
Yeah, I put it on the shelf and I go, I'll get back to this. And the reality is you never do. You buy another book. And so we didn't want that for this book. And so the idea that it's being perceived as a reference book with chapters that you can read in any order is wonderful to me. I was at a meetup. I go to a meetup in Sacramento where it's about speaking, but almost every speaker there is an author. And one guy, about a year ago, he was writing like his 10th or 11th book. He said, um, research shows that most people only read the first chapter of a business book. So my new book is just one chapter.
I love it.
Because your business books run out of gas, right? A lot of them are like overblown blog posts. So, we worked on this book for 2 years, making sure that, every chapter and every page of every chapter and every little tidbit is actionable advice that
Right.
hopefully will apply for some time to come.
Yeah, that's one thing I want the listeners to understand is this is not a typical business book. It's very digestible, easy to digest, and I mean you have to get it to see what we're talking about. But
Yeah,
um,
you can preview it at the roadtorecognition.com. There's 3 free chapters, ABC.
there you
You
go.
mentioned, uh, shameless plug here, but you mentioned that it looks cool, and I didn't speak to that. The book, one of the things that took so much time and frankly money was making this book. Seth once called it a children's book for adults. Now, to me, that's not a perfect description. There's nothing kid-like about it, but we
Mm,
invented a font and a color scheme, a bright golden yellow type of thing and black. And so the book has a lot of white space,
mm-hmm.
has 26 contributors, has this two-color approach, and yeah, it's as pretty as we possibly could have made it. And a lot of comments are coming in that make us feel good that all that time and money was worthwhile.
Yeah, and I've noticed too that for a book, there's a lot of bullet points as well and short paragraphs.
Yeah, I write like that. I mean, like we said, it's a reference book. One of my favorite
Right.
books, you probably read it, is Everybody Writes by Anne Handley.
I have not yet. I need
Oh, okay.
to.
Put that on your reading list. I mean, you're already a talented writer, but I uh, I don't let that stop me from reading the occasional book about writing. And her book's kind of a reference book too for the modern ages. It's about writing, but it's really about writing in digital media.
Hmm.
And every chapter, she sort of rulizes her book, if you will. There's like X number of rules. I don't know the number offhand.
Hmm.
I do know that I'm on page 255. I got excited to be involved or to be included in a book by such a
Yeah.
well-recognized star like Anne. But but her book is just it reads like a series of blog posts. In her case, kind of short listicle blog posts. And when I read that, it sort of felt like it gave me permission to chunk my book. Somebody called it that, like the
Hmm.
deliberate act of turning things into lists and quotes, and those sort of ideas they called chunking. I'm like, all right, I
Yeah.
didn't know I was chunking, but chunking it shall be.
I love that word, chunking.
Yeah, I chunked a book.
Yeah, but the way you and Seth laid this book out, I think a lot of people will appreciate and enjoy. Barry, let's start. Let's get into your book a little bit more here. You start your book by telling the reader that they already have a personal brand. Your book is not about creating a personal brand from scratch. It's more about developing what's already there. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, there's this woman. Oh man, it escapes me. Erica Nicole. She's the founder of some um, very well-known magazine, so well-known that I can't think of it offhand. But
Hmm.
she said, if you don't, I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at this quote either, but it's on our website and it's in our book. If you don't develop your personal brand, somebody else will. And so I've
Yeah.
seen that a large part of our audience are realtors, thanks to Seth's commitment to his company Playster, and some of them don't like what they see when they Google themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously doesn't apply simply to, the niche called realty, but you have a personal brand whether you like it or not. You probably have some digital footprint. I hope if you're, taking your career seriously, you have a LinkedIn account, and if you understand the need to create content, you have a blog, and if you understand the need to promote it, you have social media accounts and you're sharing. And so when your name gets Googled, people are going to find out good or bad things, and they're going to be from you and people that support you, or they're going to be from others, which I guess is the frightening proposition. And so to speak to your question, I think I think you're quoting like the first paragraph of the whole book. I'm trying to say you already have a personal brand. Don't kid yourself, unless you've gone out of your way to be invisible. This is the age of digital media. You have a personal brand. Now it's time to develop it. Now it's time to make it better. Are you going to take an active role in that, or are you not?
Right. That's interesting. I was going to ask you about Erica's quote as well. Her quote exactly was this: there's a good chance that if you're not controlling your personal brand, someone else is. So, are you saying that if you don't control your brand, the internet's going to control your brand?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta like what you see when you Google yourself. Uh, you gotta strive to show up when people are using the search engines of social media channels, particularly LinkedIn, where the professional development takes place. And so, yeah, if you just sit back and let it be, you might be unpleasantly surprised with what happens. I'm very conscious of that. I wrote a blog post that did pretty well about, the recommendation to Google yourself and see what you see and learn from it. In some cases, it's difficult if you have a popular name. So if you're John
Hmm.
Smith or even Seth Price, who um, unfortunately competes with this crazy kind of counterculture artist, You duke it out with people that have beat you to it. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to put a nickname in there, such as you do, or a
Mm-hmm.
middle initial, or, like Feldman Creative, I think is kind of a nice compromise. In the book, I mention Jeff Goins. A lot of people read his blog, and he's written
Yeah.
quite a few books now. And he brands himself as Goins Writer, which I thought is a really cool idea.
Yeah, exactly. Even Matthew Loomis, there's like, I don't know, 35, 40 of them out there on the internet. So, yeah,
Yeah, but
that's
there's only one Kaboomus Loomis.
exactly. That's why I did that to begin with 4 years ago. Why didn't you put me in your book? Anyway,
On the spot. 'Cause you're new, man. No,
I
um,
haven't paid my dues yet,
second
huh?
edition. You're in the book. I didn't know that you were going to help bring the message to the masses. And
I'm just
I
kidding,
think.
Barry.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, the people that are in the book either wrote or spoke about personal branding in the past,
Right, right.
or they're largely like Seth and I had a bit of a discussion like should these contributors come from all walks of life? Should we get the chef and the chiropractor, and the
Hmm.
life coach and so forth, and that probably would have been good, and there probably are books like that, but those people, Seth and I travel, speak, and get interviewed and do these things in marketing circles. And so
Right.
my friends in high places are the people in the book. Jay Baer wrote the foreword, and in A we have Kim Garst, who I've collaborated with before on her website. In B we have Brian Clark, who I have collaborated with on his websites, Copy Blogger and Rainmaker. And C is for content, and in that section we have Joe Polizzi. So we sort of went with like these rock stars of marketing approach,
Oh, yeah.
and hopefully that'll pay off not just with the trust factor that comes with recognized personal brands, but hopefully they'll get behind the book.
Yeah, I think those are all great choices when it comes to personal branding because I follow pretty much all those people that you mentioned. So, Barry, what if a blogger wants to build an audience but their website isn't monetized? Excuse me, monetized. Is personal branding still important?
All important, I think. You know what I did, and I imagine to some extent you've done this yourself, and you've told your audience to do it, and that is a guest blog. You, regardless of your writing skills, regardless of your design skills, your chops, your consistency, your brilliance, you are going to struggle as a new blogger in this unbelievably noisy space, to find an audience. There's no way around it. And I was really late to the game. It was 2011 when I got my first WordPress website, and I, I wasn't great at blogging right out of the gate, but I, studied it ferociously, and um,
Wow,
posted a lot.
2011. Wow, okay. I didn't realize you were that late.
Yeah, it was pretty late. I felt like a dummy. I mean, I was writing digital marketing stuff for the 2 decades that preceded that, but I didn't really take blogging too seriously. I thought it was a bunch of like, you know, whiners talking about their lives, and didn't really see it as a marketing strategy to the degree that
Right.
almost everybody agrees it is now. And so where was I going with that discussion? Oh, guest blogging. Okay, so I quickly discovered, it doesn't matter how good I do this or how often I do this, nobody's reading it, and how can I fix that? I suppose one way is with money, but it would probably be a lot of money. You can indeed, and you probably should experiment with AdWords and Facebook ads and the type of things that would be keyword specific and drive people to discover you. But a better way to do it, and certainly a organic and less financially based way to do it, is to identify the people that already have large audiences. Right, so we've already talked about some of those. Copy Blogger is one of them, and Convince and Convert by Jay Baer is one of them, and I became a columnist or a regular writer on social media today. I busted into um, Content Marketing Institute, and the list is long. I've written for probably more than 50 marketing websites now. Well, that's how I got an audience. They discovered me there, and there are links to assets on my website, and there are profiles or author bios, and that helped me drive people to my website. Over time, I got wise about various email subscription building strategies, started offering lead magnets. Now have an email list of 12,000 plus or something like that. And so that's how it's done, man. It's not the least bit easy, and it's harder today than it was yesterday.
Yeah, so what about authenticity as being important to building a personal brand? Your book describes it as like a compass that navigates us to developing our personal brand towards something that we can believe in. So how does authenticity work like a magnet?
Well, people buy stuff from people, right? Even though you love the Starbucks brand, maybe you have a favorite Starbucks and maybe you have a favorite clerk or barista. So yeah, people buy stuff from people, and I think the idea of authenticity comes up so often when you talk about social media and personal branding. It sounds a little cliche, it's like, don't fake it, be yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just true, I guess most cliches are true. And so I hold my nose when I see new bloggers that think they're journalists, and they try to be objective, and they try to be everything to everybody, and then they try to extract themselves. And the bloggers that you can connect with, the Ann Hanleys, Ted Rubin, Jason Falls, Brian Clark, Darren Rouse, John Morrow, Matthew Kabumas Loomis. They bring themselves to it. They're authentic, and so they tell stories, and they have successes, and they have flaws, and in some cases they have pets, and in some cases they have children, and in all cases they have hobbies, and it just makes it a better story. There really are very few exceptions now of companies that are getting anywhere without understanding that. Kim Garst tells the best version of it because she applies it to big companies in a book she wrote called Will the Real You Please Stand Up? It's entirely a book about authenticity. When I bought that book, I'm like, how could you write a couple hundred pages about authenticity? But she pulls it off.
I'll have to check out that book. So to express that authenticity, that we do that through a blog, which your book talks about. There's a whole section on blogging. Why do you warn us to not be too promotional in our blog posts instead we should focus on delivering value? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think that should be understood, but unfortunately, especially in the enterprise space, nothing can be further than the truth. It's misunderstood.
Yeah, I think new bloggers, may not understand that.
Yeah, so a new blogger for any size company, probably more dangerous if you are in a big company and you've already, fallen in love with your product and your brand. The more you talk about your product and your brand, the more you're going to deflect readers and fail to get readership, because nobody gives a crap about your company. They give a crap about their company or themselves. Okay, so, how many blogs have you seen that are poorly disguised collections of press releases, or, a modern one today, like in software, as they're about updates to the software? And I'm not saying like that's completely out of bounds to, you want to have a forum for doing that stuff, and maybe your website has a product update section, or maybe it has a news section, but you don't want to confuse that with a blog. A blog is all about delivering value. I like to say to people when they're first getting into blogging that the goal is not to get people to your website. I talked about how I achieved that with guest blogging, but the goal is to get people to subscribe to your website. And you do that by being interesting and helpful. And so I think that the golden trifecta of a blog that people love is education, entertainment, and inspiration. And you can tackle one, two, or all three. And when you do that with some sort of unique voice, you are more likely to get people to subscribe and come back. And that that's how it works. And there's no denying it that you want to yak about your company. The people at your website don't care about your company. It's a flawed strategy.
Barry, I think you're a good example of that trifecta of good blog content that you're talking about, which is why I was a little surprised in your book. You wrote that you grade yourself on personal branding. You would give yourself an F if you had to grade yourself on personal branding. So tell us why you think you deserved an F in personal branding, which I suppose you were talking about the past, not now.
Yeah. Thank you for clearing that up. I mean, I guess that's like the first page of the first preface. There's two prefaces, so the only thing that precedes it is the legalese pages and Jay Baer's forward. But I thought it was very interesting in that the book walks you through the alphabet. That I start with a letter, and I think I was walking my dog one day when I thought about where I might be if I started earlier. If I started like in the days Copy Blogger started or Pro Blogger started. And so, I don't want people to hear this and shame themselves and say it's too late. As they say in planting a tree, and it applies to blogging too, the best time to put that seed in the ground was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So that F that I gave myself was what I admitted to earlier, that I didn't get that blogging actually mattered, and I didn't get that content marketing mattered. And I'm not alone, so I think I'm in detention with the other F students, but I wouldn't give myself an F now. As I also say in the book, I'm somewhat satisfied with the reputation I've built and the recognition I get for being a digital marketing super freak and advisor and writer and so forth. But I wanted to sort of, as I often do with all my writing, is sort of slap people upside the head. Go. If you're not taking personal branding seriously, you get an F too.
Right, absolutely. Your book talks about 12 types of blog content that digital marketers and entrepreneurs can use to build their personal brand, such as tutorials, guides, roundups, list posts, stories, and seven other types of content. So which forms of content do you recommend the most for personal branding? Which do you think is the most effective?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a, hold on, my headphone cord is tripping me up.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a, that's not an easy question. I think the reason I'm babbling to come up with this is that there is the importance and longevity of search. The book captures search in chapter G. G is for Google, and chapter K. K is for keywords. And so with that idea in mind, that you're going to build your audience in every way and get discovered via search engines, begs for you to create robust blog posts, perhaps embellished by other media such as audio and video, and make it the kind of thing that ranks. Today, the kind of thing that ranks are, what Andy Crestodina, who's also featured in the book, calls the best page on the internet for that topic. And those are generally long, and meanwhile the populace is going, well, nobody wants to read anymore, and long is bad. Well, that's not right. In the search realm, long, deep posts are what ranks. And so that would probably be your how-to posts. They could be lists. These things sort of overlap. They could be resources. It's the 35 of the best personal branding books of all time. That's likely to rank for, best personal branding books. Roundups are a different strategy that sort of introduces, while they might do well in search if they have great titles, it sort of introduces this other end of the dichotomy I'm talking about, and that is optimizing for social. Optimizing for social might be more bite-sized. It might be more emotional. There's these things online given to us first by American Marketing Institute or something like that, and then later by CoSchedule, two kind of versions of the same thing, this headline analyzer thing. And it analyzes the emotional appeal of your headline, which is quite a bit different than the rankability of your headline.
Yeah.
And so, I think the objectives differ. Probably a great blogger would look at my list of ways to do it. We mentioned quite a few, roundups being kind of a strategy. Andy again says that a partner in collaboration or a partner in creation is a partner in promotion, or an ally in creation is an ally in promotion, or something like that. And so the idea, like you do a post featuring 25 rock stars, like our book kind of is a roundup of sorts, in that there are a lot of contributors to it. You are going for the effect that you might get from social media of those people helping promote it. There are, there's, what are these other categories? Stories, contrarians. I'm a big fan of the contrarian, right? When there's a conversation happening and it's trending and you feel you could challenge some of the opinions. I often do this because I have a lot of less than mainstream opinions about SEO. I write contrarian articles. Curation, reviews, guest posts. Yeah, there's no perfect answer for which the personal brander should do. Do the things that you feel good about doing, so you're not forcing it, and then follow with the things that work, right? One of the final chapters of the book is X is for examine, pardon the cheating by using a word that actually begins with E. But, any brander, any marketer, bloggers and personal branders included, have to closely watch how it's going, what worked and what didn't, what channels are pulling, what blog posts are improving time on site and engagement and click-throughs to other pages and conversions. And you need to know that stuff. And that should inspire, what you do next. You can't just go flying blind and just keep guessing.
Right. And you talk about social in the book, and that plays a huge part in this whole process. Let's talk about social for a little bit. You, in your book, you focus on, you have a section of your book called Grow Your Audience.
Yeah, F is for followers, actually, I think.
Okay, that's what it was. F is for followers. And in this section, I believe you focus on using social media. First of all, do you recommend starting with one or two social media platforms? Which platforms would you recommend for personal branding?
LinkedIn. L is for LinkedIn in the book. There are, dog and cat videos, as much as adorable as they are, I love them. They don't fly on LinkedIn. People are on LinkedIn for career development. And in some cases, unfortunately, selling. But, the idea is there are no chapters in the book. The F is not for Facebook, and T is not for Twitter. It could be. I'm not dissing Facebook and Twitter. I'm saying that one of the first places you should stop and get serious about, and therefore why the book involves such a deep asset in L is for LinkedIn, is LinkedIn. And you learn how to do it, and then you learn how to make connections there and build your network and get involved in the things that are happening there. Otherwise, the list is pretty long, if you're trying to sell stuff to my kids, hopefully you're not ignoring Instagram and Snapchat. If you're trying to sell stuff to brides or win their love, or chefs, or cooking hobbyists, you better be on a Pinterest where the pictures flow daily in the bazillions of attractive looking ingredients and plates and menus and so forth. And so it all differs. I think for a blogger, it's really hard to ignore Twitter. Twitter's sort of like the classified advertising section, of blogging. It's where you introduce yourself to other influencers and share each other's work and in some cases converse. And then, Facebook, I've never been real bullish on Facebook because it's so difficult to break through. But its popularity is undeniable. And what I'm learning now,
Hmm.
while Facebook pages is sort of a pain in the butt, pay to play game.
Hmm.
Um, you know, People get around that by making their personal Facebook pages about their what they're doing, including their professions.
Hmm.
And then what's really happening is Facebook groups, right? When you're building a following, you got to go where like-minded people are having discussions, and so that list just keeps growing. It could be forums, it could be Quora, it could be groups
Right.
and private communities. Almost every platform, like Google comes to mind, they tried, seemingly kind of failed, to give you a community building platform called Circles. And so, now we have
Hmm.
Slack and collaboration tools, and there's a lot of options, and the answers to which social media you choose should be you choose LinkedIn, automatic, and then you research where the action is and where the conversation is taking place specifically in your niche.
Absolutely. And let's don't leave out Pinterest. It's one thing that's interesting is I just discovered that I've got more for this podcast. There are more subscribers on Pinterest than my YouTube channel. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. You must be feeding them something to look at.
um, that's what is interesting. I have not been totally consistent on Pinterest, so I was like, I need to be. I need to be very consistent.
Maybe Matt, you have a female audience. Pinterest is insanely female skewed.
I know, and actually, it is slightly more on the female side. Interestingly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't leave out Pinterest. I mean, I love Pinterest. I sort of have a love-hate relationship with Pinterest because once I click there, I know I'm going to be trapped out of with curiosity for 2 hours and
Right.
not get anything done besides reading cool stuff and printing recipes and so forth. But yeah, bloggers. It certainly doesn't jump to mind first. It's not super easy to optimize unless you really get in and understand it. In the early goings, I think you were unable to have backlinks. Basically your pin was a backlink,
Mm.
and that's changed, I guess. Like Rebecca Radice, who I've interviewed about
Mm.
social sharing, she says she gets the largest portion of her traffic to her blog from Pinterest. And
Yeah.
she is indeed very bullish on it, and she teaches people how to do that. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out too, but I think it's definitely worth figuring out. Uh,
Yeah, well, every social media channel's got its own quirks, and you sometimes you make bad bets on ones that are not going anywhere. They seem well, rather than being cruel and naming names, they seem to disappear now and then, right?
I
Like
think I know who you're talking
Blab
about.
and Vine, and
Yeah.
they're kind of distant memories, and some of the more obvious ones from big digital companies. But you get out of social media, and this applies to a social media channel, what you put into it, right? So if
Yeah.
you want to put some time into learning Pinterest, you read blogs about Pinterest, you go to conferences where Pinterest experts are speaking, you buy their books, and you learn how to use Pinterest.
Right. And I like how you said that, you get what you put into it. So I'm curious what your take is on social media commenting. Should we leave a lot of comments on social media or just a few? I mean, how is there some sort of amount that we should be shooting for?
I think you do it like you mean it. If it gets pretty clear when you're link bombing and trolling, and you're just like copying and pasting crap on
Right.
Quora's answer streams or whatever, and so yeah, that stuff's not going to take you far. I think the different social media um, promote conversation in different ways, and Facebook enters the fray again here because it probably is the most conversational, it's certainly the most popular. And I think when you're moved to say something, and that doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I wrote something about that too, click here.
Mm.
When you can add value, it actually is the same as blog commenting. When you're driven to add value to the conversation, take a contrarian stance, expand the story, challenge the story. I guess that's the contrarian stance. Ask an intelligent question. You should do that. I can't tell you how much or how little, but I find it particularly effective, and I've given this advice a lot. When you're trying to get somebody on someone's radar, right? Let's say you're
Right.
going after, you know, um, Joe Johnson, and he's the leading blogger in your space, and you've never met him, and maybe you never will, and you don't know, if you don't know his email address. Well, read his blog, read his tweets, follow him on Facebook, and whatever social media makes sense. Hopefully you can find him and connect with them on LinkedIn. That is permission-based, obviously. And join the conversation, and then he will know you.
Right. Barry, this is such good stuff. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Where can people get a copy of your book?
The book is available everywhere, and even in places I didn't know. The place we'd like you to get it, if you hear this soon, as in late April, early May, is Amazon. That's where most people buy their books, and that's sort of like a yardstick for its popularity. You need reviews, you need volume, you need to show up in search. It's kind of its own search engine now. So if you if you prefer Barnes and Noble or 800 CEO Reads or whatever, Kobo, I notice, has it. Do what you do, but buy the book there. You're not going to have a hard time finding it with the keywords of personal branding or its title, The Road to Recognition. And then if you act fast, infomercial, you can go to theroadtorecognition.com. Make sure to use the word "the" at the beginning. That when I say act fast, I don't mean that website's coming down anytime soon, but right now, in like weeks 1 through 3 or something like that, are all these special offers. Like we've talked quite a bit about blogging for obvious reasons. Seth and I have prepared a offer that is a getting started guide to blogging that's much deeper than the B chapter, and so that's an example of one of the many offers there. There's going to be a video series and all kinds of good stuff soon to come at theroadtorecognition.com. And of course, we didn't talk a hell of a lot about Feldman Creative, but the website for Feldman Creative is feldmancreative.com, and there you can reach me, contact me, and click the chiclets to find all the social channels I am active on.
Excellent. Excellent. And if you are interested in getting a copy of this book, there is a link in the show notes to every website that Barry just mentioned. So, Barry, before you go, I want to ask you a question that I ask all my guests on this podcast. And that question is, how has blogging changed your life?
Recognition. What a convenient question for the name of the book. Yeah, I was, I did well. I was raised in, I wasn't raised, but my career began in public relations and advertising agencies, and I was recognized to be good at it. I climbed the title ladder pretty fast, from assistant to copywriter to senior copywriter to creative director. And then, and that's a pretty anonymous job. I mentioned something like that in the book. You don't write commercials and ads and billboards and put your name on them. Things have changed, and we're all personal brands, and blogging has been numero uno. I write for blogs. I mentioned a few of them before, but like HubSpot and a copy blogger. And sometimes when the reputation are as big as those, people decide to hire me before we even talk. They go, "I saw you on HubSpot. I loved what you wrote. What can you do for my brand?" And so blogging, and particularly guest blogging, has been numero uno, I think, in terms of building my brand and therefore changing my life, at least professionally. And then, personally, I like it. I know it's not always easy to find time to do it, but it's fun. When you're in the ad agency business, you don't really get to express yourself, and when you're blogging, you really do get to express yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely fun, that's for sure. Barry Feldman, author of the fantastic new book on personal branding called The Road to Recognition. It has been great talking to you today.
I feel the same way. Thank you for having me, Mr. Kaboomus Loomis.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Blog Chronicles. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe on YouTube or iTunes and leave a rating or review to help other bloggers find us. If you want to chat, look me up on Twitter at Matt Loomis. So who is going to be my next guest on the Blog Chronicles? She's a blog coach for authors and an author herself, a social media consultant, WordPress trainer, and works from her home in the beautiful country of Canada. Come join us next time on the Blog Chronicles.